Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Managed Charging to Maximize EV Fleet Performance, Lessons from a New York Beverage Distributor, presented by BP Pulse. I'm Colby Brooks with Bobbit, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we will try to address them all. However, if we do not get to yours, do not worry. You will be contacted by email with a response after the event. I am joined today by our speakers, Juan Corsino, Director of Fleet Operations for Manhattan Beer Distributors, and Sean Larkin, Senior Director of Medium and Heavy Duty Fleets for BP Pulse. Thank you both for being here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourselves?
So I'm Juan Corsino, and I am the Director of Fleet Operations and Sustainability for Manhattan Beer Distributors for the past 23 years. And my main role here has convert our fleet to eliminate diesel fuel and upgrade our fleet to the latest technology. We start with natural gas, and in the past couple of years, we've moved on to the newest technology, which is battery electric vehicle.
Thanks, Juan. My name is Sean Larkin, Senior Director for Medium and Heavy Duty Fleets at BP Pulse. I have over 20 years experience in clean tech industry, 8 years in fleet electrification, and my role is really to work with fleet owners and operators such as Juan and Manhattan Beer to help them in their electrification infrastructure as they continue down their battery electric journey for battery electric trucks for their fleets. Great to be here. Would you like me to kick off maybe a little bit of the project overview with Manhattan Beer and BP Pulse, and then we can kind of go into a little bit of discussion with Juan and myself around what the project is, what we've learned, lessons around utilizing charge management, and then hopefully some answering questions from the audience. So Manhattan Beer has been a pioneer in the alternative low carbon fueling for decades. So it was really no surprise when their leadership team decided to be one of the first beverage distributors on the East Coast to really deploy full battery electric Class 8 trucks into their fleet. Our partnership began back in 2019, which doesn't seem that long ago, but it is a long time in fleet electrification. And our existing relationship was started through Volvo Trucks and Manhattan Beer. In this particular project, our scope of work with BP Pulse was really around the software and charge management. And so for us, we installed a local site controller to balance the managed and unmanaged loads on the building and the chargers. We provided Omega charge management software with including our fleet operations dashboard. And kind of some of the key feature sets that we identified early on was interoperability between chargers and multiple trucks, energy optimization, so we're providing the lowest cost of energy from the utility, real-time monitoring so that Juan and Manhattan Beer can identify if and when those vehicles are charging, where they're at in the depot, and charge health uptime, which is really key to understand like how efficient are those chargers and to make sure that those trucks are charged every single day for every duty cycle. And then alerts and notifications if there are issues, and then utility reporting, which is really critical as this original project was had some funding that was through the utility Con Ed. I want to advance the slide. There we go. So Juan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the origins of Manhattan Beer and why you started to electrify back in 2019.
Sean, as you know, we are located, our headquarters in Holmes Point, which have a high asthma rate, highest in the country. And we've been working on many different projects trying to reduce our carbon footprint. And on our effort to reduce the carbon footprint and try to do what is best for our customer and community, we decide to look into electric to see how reliable those new trucks were They new in the market. Nobody have any experience with heavy duty Class A electric vehicle. So somebody had to test them and see if they are going to work for the market. So we decided to take the initiative and order a couple of trucks. We start with 5 tractors and 3 dual chargers. And when we were not sure of performance of the charger, performance on the vehicles, we were not sure that the truck was going to be charged when the driver arrived at 4 in the morning. So with the technology that you guys brought on the table, which helped identify when a truck is charged, it helped to manage how to charge the trucks at the lower cost of energy, and we'll actually prioritize the vehicle, whichever had to leave the building first. We'll actually charge that truck faster if the power is not available to charge all the trucks at the same time. So the system is very efficient for us to be confident that the truck will be charged when the driver arrives. On a diesel truck, if the driver arrives and it's empty, he can go to the fuel pump and top off that truck in less than 10 minutes. As we know, with the electric vehicle, you will have to sit there a lot longer to charge that vehicle, which was not cost efficient to have a driver sitting, and we will lose our delivery windows. All our routes are on delivery windows. And when you miss the first one, your whole day will be missing window throughout the day. So it's very important that the truck is ready to go out at the time that the driver gets here. And for that, we need a truck fully charged at the time that it's parked in the building.
Yeah. When you first started to charge these trucks, I think one of the things that we really identified is that there is a real need for charge management. I think one of the unique solutions that you came up with early on was the ability not to get a new dedicated service from the utility. And so solution that you provided was really identifying where that gap was, where excess load in the building, your existing service, was able to pull that and redirect that to the chargers. And that was one of the areas that Juan and I really talked about a lot, is that site controller, that edge device that sits there between your service to the building and to the chargers, was a really critical component. So that allowed us to balance the energy from what was offering at the building side to the charger side. And in that, like Juan was describing, it really allowed us to shape that charging profile so that we reduce that off-peak periods, those high peak periods where the cost of energy is the highest, and around allowing that to provide, the lowest cost of energy while still providing uptime for those trucks. And Juan, I know that you and I have had a couple conversations around the trucks, but the interesting thing, can you tell us about kind of how the operations changed for you when you have a traditional diesel, when it comes into your yard, versus a electric truck, and how that new e-fueling process is handled?
Yes. So, John, first, let me add a little bit to that piece that you was describing of the service and how much power is available. The BP Pulse system played a essential role on the power available to the building. If we have a building that is consuming a lot of power, the charger reduces the output, the output to the truck to protect the server, to not create a overload on our electrical server. So that was a very important piece for us, to make sure that we continue our operation seamless without worry about we will overload service because we are plugging all these trucks together. So for anybody that is considering electrifying, the power available in your building is key. And when you have an energy management system, you protect your server. You don't blow your service or don't overheat your line. That was key for us. And John, to go to answer your question, our diesel and natural gas trucks, most of our fleet, natural gas, have a fast dispenser, which the driver came in, dropped the truck at the checkpoint, and a yard jockey take the truck, stop at the pump, fuel it up, and park the truck. So that truck is done and it's ready for the next day. When we have to charge an electric trucks, the logistic chain, we had to drive this truck to the charger, park it there, and plug it in. And sometimes we have to load the truck and bring it back to the charger to make sure that the truck is fully charged. Then at the beginning of the shift when the driver arrived to start his day. That is the period that is critical for us between 9 p.m., which the energy start dropping, is very affordable. It's less expensive than 7 p.m. during peak hour. And we try to maximize that gap, the lower cost of energy, use as much as we can to charge the trucks during the off-peak hour. But keeping in mind that that truck had to be full when the driver get here. So we program the charger, you guys program the charger with the system that manage the energy efficient and make sure the truck is fully charged the time the driver is leaving.
I think that lends to really the dashboard that you can see in real time exactly when those trucks are fueling. So if they come in with a 20% state of charge and you have to switch those trucks out, your fleet manager on the site only has to look at the Omega dashboard to see when that truck is going to be ready and fully charged. You can move that out and pull a new truck in there to charge and make sure that it's ready to go each morning. This is a question I know we talk about frequently, and hindsight's 2020, but what were, if you knew, if you could go back, Juan, and say, all right, all this years of experience, last 4 years of learning how to operate a battery electric depot, what were some of the first pain points you came across in the entire process? What were some of the issues? We identified the building load was one, which was critical. Anything else that that the listeners can identify or that we can help them with through your experience?
Hi, Juan. I think you're muted.
I apologize. So, John was
No problem.
Yes. So what I was saying was that going into EVs, I did a lot of research and tried to educate myself as much as possible. And one of the things that I knew was the level 2 charger were not going to be efficient for our operations. And I decided to jump right into level 3. And I tried to save money on going with 75 kilowatts. And that was the maximum that I decided to implement. And if I knew how the truck was going to perform, how the drivers was going to charge on our yard jockey, I would go to a higher output charger. I personally learned that, and I am a big believer of level 3 fast charger, because what I visualize for the electric vehicle to be scalable is that a large percentage, and I don't want to call a number, of EV user does not have a home where they plug in their car overnight for the whole night. They normally go and park somewhere and charge, and time is critical and valuable for everybody. So people want to plug in, charge, and leave. And it's not different for a fleet. Instead of us having a yard jockey bringing a truck to charge for a couple of hours or for an hour, and had to bring that truck to the loading dock to load it and take it back to the charger to finish charging it. Is too many moving pieces. I would love to have chargers that we can plug in the trucks, put a very high output as possible, up to 400 kilowatts, and get that truck parked and ready to leave, not having to move it a couple of times to make sure it's charged. So that would be what I would do different if I had to start over today, and make sure that I get the most efficient fast charger out there that don't compromise the integrity of the battery, of course.
Yeah. I think one of the, you were balancing the decision between the initial cost and the technology at the time, which you keep in mind was 2019. So those three chargers, three dual plug, 150 kilowatt chargers dispensing 75 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts to each vehicle, you identified that that's sufficient for a pilot, but for scale, larger and faster really does lend itself to being the best solution for you.
Yes, our vision is to eventually continue to grow our EV fleet as we see great result on. And we own 400 trucks. We cannot have a slow charger. To charge 400 trucks in an 8-hour period, you need a very fast charger. And you don't want to have the 400 charger, one charger per truck. You want to have the gas station model, which is plug in, charge, and move on, and keep that rotation.
Yeah. I'll bring up one topic that I think is really critical that many people don't experience until they actually have experienced it. And that is when there is an error on the charger or the truck, or maybe even the utility. Can you share with us kind of your experience with Omega's CMS platform, managing real time, if there's any issues, and identifying those and working through error resolutions quickly? Can you share your experience of what you have seen using Omega in that type of scenario?
So the process is that when a charger, for whatever reason, if the driver didn't close the door of the truck complete, which is one of the safety features to trigger the charger to work, or you left the parking brakes off, or the ignition is not completed enough, the trucks have a lot of safety features that all have to be applied at the time to charge. So if for whatever reason any of those features were not active, the charger will alert us right away that that truck is not charging. And I could just send somebody over, call. Actually, what I did to reduce the alert, I just included my night manager on the alert, and he would get the alert and send somebody to check. The other things that happen is when a truck get a fault or the charger get a fault, and you get an error code, you get a test message. In few seconds, it resolves itself. The system kind of reset itself and it alerts you that it's back in service. And when a charger is not working, it will send you a test message. We have test message alert that the charger is not working, and we have to go there, either unplug, reset it, or change charger. If in the worst case scenario, the charger had an issue, we will have to change the connector on that truck. But the alerts are very important to us, because we don't have to go out there and check and make sure the truck is charging. As a sample, I personally drive an EV, and I have an app on my phone. I charge my EV on the level 2 charger. So I continue to check my app to make sure that the charger is still working, that the charger didn't went out of service, or that it didn't reach the maximum time, and my car is going to be charged. If I had an alert set up if the charger failed, I don't have to check my app every 30 minutes to make sure it's still working.
Yeah, I think early on you identified, Sean, I just want these trucks charged. That's it. I want the same consistency. I want the same reliability that I have with the rest of my fleet. I want that same experience with electric trucks. And still being a early industry, we're going to have errors. There will be, it's a highly complicated technology of fueling that is traditional to diesel and fast fuel. So the alarms and the notifications that we set up through Omega CMS was really critical early on. You said, I want to know when I have to have interaction with that charger. And the benefit of having a managed charge management system like Omega is 90% of the time when we identify an error, we can do an automatic resolution through software in under a minute. And if we did our job right, Juan, you will never get those notifications, blissfully unaware that there was an issue. But you described when there's a critical error and that truck isn't going to be available to run its route, you want to be aware. You want to be notified. And so that's what we set up through Omega is when we have a critical error that requires a hard reset or maybe a plug in and plug out, that notification goes to Juan or someone on your team so that you can immediately interact with that and we can get that truck back up and online and charging. And that's critical for any fleet owner. When we're talking about uptime and that vehicle and those chargers coordinating, I cannot stress enough how much charge management is a really critical component. It's like the flight traffic controller, air traffic controller for an airport is that CMS, that charge management. It coordinates between the truck, it coordinates between the charger, the utility, and the energy. And at any given point, if there's a fault within those connections, we identify it, we log that error, we go immediately into error resolution to fix it, or we notify you that there is a action that needs to occur in the field. So without that, you would never know if that charger wasn't charging. You would never know if that truck wasn't refueling or e-fueling properly. And the worst thing that could possibly happen, Juan, is when one of your drivers comes out in the morning and he jumps in that truck and it's dead. There's no juice or no fuel in there. And that is the worst scenario. So there's really only one metric that we track at BP Pulse through our Omega platform, and that's uptime. How reliable can we be as a third-party software that's critical to make sure that those vehicles are operating and running every single duty cycle?
You hit it all. And that is what I look for. Make sure the truck is running, making sure that it did get fully charged when the driver got there.
Yeah. So we'll go to the next steps and we'll talk a little bit about the results. I think we spoke in length around the uptime, but the other critical part, which is what you identified early on, Juan, is I also want to make sure that it's providing me the lowest cost of energy. And energy is not like traditional diesel. In energy at any given utility across the country, you can have 3, 4, 5 different price points at any given day, at any given peak of power used. And that's really critical to make sure that you have a system that can understand when those lowest costs of energy is and make sure that those trucks are charged. So we'll give an example here, and this is another thing that we do for our customers is that we do a quarterly business review, which is a great opportunity for us to take raw data that we learned in the field. We collect that and put it into a presentation, and Juan is kind enough to spend 45 minutes with us, and we go over what we learned. And then those learnings, we can identify some patterns. And those patterns, we can show those to Juan, and Juan can identify maybe some of the operational changes that can help support that. But the one highlight that Juan always likes to see that we go over is what's the cost savings? And in the first half of this year alone, we identified that the managed versus unmanaged load, we were able to save 48%. It's a very specific number because we just completed this. 48% in your electric costs. That's $22,000 cost savings in the first half of the year alone. And in that well makes up for additional cost in the licenses and the fees that are associated with a charge management system to make sure that that vehicle is running and also saving you energy and time, and more importantly, money.
So, John, money is always a sell point to any CFO. I do have to justify the investment. And when we are in New York City, and our utility have, you name it, could be 5 different rates. But the most expensive energy is between 3 and 7 p.m. Those are our peak hour. If you can prevent my charger from charge, even if the truck is plugged in, and you can hold that charge to start after 7 p.m., you just save us whatever amount of triple rate we were going to spend during those hours. Very important to mention here today, because I am going to approach you with this as a program with our utility, that the energy is very inexpensive between midnight and 6 a.m. It's a new program that they launched, and we want to take advantage of it. It won't cost us much to charge the vehicle during those hours. We actually get a credit for only charging during those hours. So I want to touch base on that. We see the savings, and we actually have the buildings available. We're not using any powers in some of the buildings. We have 4 buildings together here, so we're not using any power past 3 p.m. So the energy is always available past 7 p.m. to take advantage of those lowest rates. So you did show me some savings, which are significant. Probably the first half of the year, we save more than what will cost us for the full year in the energy management system.
Yep. And that's also a really important point that you made. One is that tariffs change, whether you're in California, you're in Texas, you're in Ohio, Oregon, New Jersey, or New York, utility rates change. And so having experts that understand utility, that understand energy, is really an important part. You don't need to be an energy expert, Juan, or you don't need to be an EV expert, but you're relying on us to be that subject matter experts. And when these programs come up and they change, we also provide you the ability to change your charging profile so that you can capture additional savings. And it's a great call out. It's a great example of always identify if you get notification from a utility that there's a new EV rate or there's a change in your rate. And when we go through those quarterly business reviews with you, that's also what we identify as what's the current status of this rate. Is it going to change from a summer to a winter rate? Is there new rates that are coming out that might be affecting? And that's another area that we go through with you to identify the right tariff and the right rate for charging. I think it's important too to identify that when we came back, we started looking at all these chargers, Juan, you came back, the average state of charge was about 77% in the first half of 2024. That means that those trucks, when they came back in and they charged and went back out, they had enough capacity for them to do every single route. And you don't need to use 100% of that battery, but using that battery efficiently, as Manhattan Beer is, and using CMS to make sure that that charge is slow and even all the way through, really does save the health of the battery in the long run. So you're doing a really good justice in kind of making sure that that asset that you invested in is going to be there over a long period of time. And also say that the average uptime of all those chargers was 97.5%. That's pretty amazing. When we talk about uptime, that's a critical component, because if that truck doesn't run, like we said before, that affects your business. And when it affects your business, that's not a great thing. We don't want that at all. So I really appreciate you going through that and talking about how critical that not only the savings is, but also the utility. A couple other points we'll make as well is that, we had over 1,049 charging sessions over that first half of the year. That's pretty amazing to have 97.5% uptime over 1,000 plus charging sessions. And 89% of those trips that we started with had at least 80% state of charge. That's the number we were trying to identify there. And 94% of those faults that we talked about that were so critical for uptime, we resolved those in under 1 minute. That means, one, you never knew that there was an issue, and we did our job right. Because trust me, you don't want to get notified every single time there's an error. Software is really critical. Sometimes waiting, allowing the software to roll through and go through an error resolution pattern is all it takes for it to come back on and run again. And this graph that we showed here kind of describes what it would look like without load management. And you see those large peaks of green. Those are your demand charges. And so there was two ways that we were able to save Manhattan Beer and Juan money on their cost of energy. Was one, curtailing power and charging till after that 7 p.m. and deferring that charging for the lowest cost of energy. The other part is that we curtailed the peak load. And that demand load is really expensive in some areas, to the extent of tens of thousands of dollars a month that is required to pay, because the highest peak in that green is where your demand charge stays. And so if you keep it below, each one of those tiers below has a different demand rate. So what we optimized was the lowest demand rate with the deferred charging to make sure that those trucks are charged every single time. If we go to the next slide. Yeah. So starting next year, I think you have plans to continue to scale Juan. Maybe you could share with us what's your plans for electrification? I know you have 400 trucks in your fleet. What's the goal? What's the learning and lessons you've already experienced in the last almost 5 years of battery electric trucks? And where's battery electrics going to be evolving in your fleet?
Yeah. So, Sean, before I answer your question, let me just touch on your previous topic where we are over 97% uptime. For a prototype, for a pilot, for a test, I take that any day, okay? So I wish I can keep over 97% on everything else. So we are very happy with the result of EV. Let me just say that and leave it there. Now, to answer your question, our owner, Simon Bergson, he always wants to do what he's considered as the right thing to do. And our vision always has sustainability in. And we want to do what is best for future generations. And if electric vehicle is the solution for carbon reduction, that is the direction we are going. Aside of that is the right thing to do, we have to obey some mandates that will be coming soon. We will comply with all the mandates, adding additional EV. And even before the mandates kick in, we will add a few more trucks. We will continue to add electric vehicles to our fleet. And our goal is to, you ask Simon, he wants to eliminate diesel this year, today. He don't want any fossil fuel in the fleet. Realistic, it will take us 3 to 4 years to finish our conversion to eliminate the use of diesel fuel. Our natural gas are not running on fossil fuel. We use renewable natural gas. And on our electric vehicle, we have solar farm on our roof. So most of our energy is green. We produce our own energy on our own roof, and we use it to charge our electric vehicles. So I think that's a great benefit. Use green energy to charge electric vehicle. That actually reduces more our carbon reduction footprint. We will be adding few more trucks in 2025. We just put 5 trucks in service this year, 5 electric trucks, and we are adding some additional trucks for 2025. So we continue adding slowly. And every time we have a diesel truck that is due for retirement, we consider to retire that truck and replace it with a electric truck.
Yeah. I think that's a very strong statement, because Manhattan Beer has always been a fantastic steward to the environment, not only through your early adoption of CNG, but it just tells me that you're also committed to expanding your zero emission fleets because it works. Now, I'll say this question off the cuff, because you and I both live in the New England states or Northeast. We're not in California. We're not in California, or we're not in an area that might have mild climates, but yet it still works. You have proven that regardless of where these trucks are deployed, anywhere in the beverage industry across the country, there's still a viable use case. Not only a use case, you're excelling and you're improving and you're actually expanding your fleet, which is pretty incredible. So while I say that New York is New York, it's not California. Thankful for that. That's good. But in many ways, there's a lot of challenges that you come up with that people in other mild climates don't have. And I applaud you for being one of the early adopters and really putting that foot forward, because you learned a lot of lessons about how to drive and what climate looks like in using battery electric trucks.
Yes, we actually identified a couple of issues at the earliest stage, and we work with OEM, and our OEM were great acting right away on resolving the climate issues, which we had some driver complaining not enough heat, and our OEM grabbed the trucks and improved the heat. And batteries, whatever situation we had, OEM jumped on it right away and resolved the issues. For the past 2 years, we haven't had any complaint. Our drivers actually are pleased to use those trucks.
Yeah, I think I'll end on this and we'll go to questions. But I'm incredibly grateful for Manhattan Beer and partnering with you over these years. This has been a truly pioneer in battery electric trucks, not only on the East Coast, but also across the country. And it takes a critical amount of coordination amongst all stakeholders. So for your fleet to be successful, it needed stakeholders in coordination with Volvo Trucks, who have been a tremendous partner. You needed coordination with the charging manufacturers, the utility, and BP Pulse to help manage all that energy and the charging. So that has not taken away anything, but only added to your experience. So if there's one thing I think I could share that you've done really well, Juan, is you've been a great voice for battery electric trucks in the beverage industry. You've been a leader and an advocate, and I really, really appreciate that. And many people do too. So thank you for being a pieneer. I think that is the last of our presentation. Maybe we could move over to questions and answers. And Juan and I are happy to field any that may have come up with the audience.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both. We do have some time remaining and we've had some great questions come in. So let's dive into that. First one, how did you manage the permit or inspection process to allow this type of installation with the load management? Did this require educating the local AHJ as to safeties or safeguards within the system intelligence?
So we actually hire a company that handle all our permitting, and BP Pulse actually at the early stage help with the planning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe I'll add to that a little bit, Colby, too. The permitting was pretty easy as far as the installation, because it was still going through the contractors for Manhattan Beer, and Juan coordinated that. And the other important part with the load management was, while it wasn't required with this installation because we weren't exceeding the amount of load that was coming into Manhattan Beer, BP Pulse and Omega is recognized in many utilities across the country as a load management that can curtail and cap load from those chargers above and beyond what might be the nameplate or the total added up charger energy from all those chargers that are online. So while we didn't utilize it here in this particular one because it wasn't required, we do work with utilities to make and AHJs to make sure that when we do software and we add Omega, and the utility can recognize that there is advanced charge management on that system, and you can oversubscribe in some cases to make sure that that system is operational.
Okay, great.
Yes, to elaborate a little bit more on
please.
Sean's answer. Sean, it was, I remember now, we actually submitted a law letter to our utility company, and they came back with the answer that Sean gives. You guys do have enough power available, no additional load required for that amount of charge.
Okay. All right. Well, the next one we got asked a few times here, so it's a popular one. How many BEV versus how many diesel vehicles are in your fleet?
So you're missing one piece. We actually have our fleet mostly natural gas, not diesel. So let me just throw that in. But we only have 11 electric vehicles, about 100 diesel vehicles remaining, and close to 300 compressed natural gas.
Okay. And how long did it take for the utility to give enough power for the chargers? How much power do the chargers draw?
So those chargers, the one that I installed, are 75 kilowatt each. We have 3 of those. Each charger use 200 amp breaker. The charger itself pull about 150 amps. So we have a 400 amp dedicated service just for those chargers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Can you share a bit about the driver's experience when driving the EVs?
We actually did a survey. Volvo came here. They sent their own prep to interview each one of the driver, and they want to identify what they could improve. And it was nothing that the driver asked for. They were very happy with the result of electric trucks, the performance of it. They did not ask for any modification. So they actually like the trucks as it is, and very hard to get a driver that is used to drive an electric truck to go back on a diesel truck. That's very hard to make happen.
Yeah, I mean, change isn't easy, and a lot of people don't like it. So it's good to hear that it's adapting well.
Yeah, I love when I go on site when I get an opportunity to walk these depots. I love talking to the drivers. They usually come back, especially in the beverage industry, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. They've done their routes early in the morning. They come back. They're circulating through. But if I can grab some time with the driver and talk to them, there's a couple key things that they always say. One is, it's so quiet. And you don't understand how quiet it is until you're in that cab and driving it. And the other is the performance. It's technology. It's high tech compared to some traditional stuff. But I think, one, you have dedicated drivers to each one of those vehicles, each one of those trucks. And if you try taking away that truck from one of your drivers, you're gonna have to answer to them because they love them that much. And once they get used to them and they understand the efficiencies, and they start playing with the single pedal and the regenerated braking so that battery starts charging as you're going downhill or the braking occurs. All that stuff really makes an enjoyable drive. It's just different than you have in a traditional diesel. So if I get an opportunity to talk to drivers, some of them they're elated. And then I talked to one a couple months ago, and he's waiting in queue. He's waiting for either a new truck or someone to go on vacation so that he can get back en route and get in one of those. So I think from a fleet manager standpoint, one, your job is to make sure that you're optimizing that asset for that company. The other is to make sure those drivers are happy. And those employees are making sure that they're making their routes, they're in front of customers, but more importantly, they're able to do their job and they're having some fun doing it. So I would challenge anybody that's out there that if you get an opportunity to talk to a driver that's driving a battery electric truck, ask him, take a couple minutes. I think you'll be surprised with their response.
Sean, let me add one piece to that. driver retention is the best incentive you can give to a driver for driver retention.
Yeah. So you think the driver retention just for having new technology and those new trucks really is something that you track and you think is helpful?
I know from my experience, we acquired a company that didn't have any technology on their trucks, and I get feedback from the driver all day long. And it was a shortage of drivers during COVID, and that's the best incentive you can give it to a driver. It's a comfort ride for 8 hours. They get in their trucks, and they don't have to get the fumes from the emissions. They don't have the noises from the engines. We buy the trucks with 16 position massage seat, so they don't want to get out of it. So we make the truck as comfortable as possible to make sure that nobody can offer our driver a better ride. Our driver is comfortable and they take ownership of the truck.
Yeah, there's some great insights. I need to get one of those massagers in my car. So, Sean, this question is directed for you. Through the last business review, you saved 48% over previous periods without load management. What are some more efficient practices that you typically recommend to ensure that the customers are able to most effectively leverage their systems?
That's a great question. One of the metrics that we look at is the state of charge of when that truck leaves the depot and when it returns. And when we're seeing that a depot might leave with 90% state of charge or the amount of fuel, e-fuel in their tank, they come back with 40 or maybe even 50% sometimes. And so what we're able to do is identify in that QBR, and we're talking to fleet managers, like all we know is the data. That particular route only used 40% of the capacity of that truck. And in doing that, they can identify perhaps other routes that are longer or might have other use cases where in some cases they're able to do a slip seat in which a truck came back and then they turned the driver and it went right back out because there was enough capacity for that truck to do 2 routes in a single day. Short routes, but 2 routes all the same. So those are one of the things that we didn't see when we started to do this. We just saw the data of the chargers and we saw the state of the charge coming back. But it took that coordination and that conversation with Juan and other fleet managers for them to connect the dots and say, oh, this is fantastic. The efficiency of these trucks are higher than we expected. The cost of running that truck on a longer route can help us offset that TCO and make sure that we're getting more reach into other routes. And that's an opportunity for them to just, really start to bring more efficiency to those battery electric trucks in their fleet.
Awesome. And are you expecting to scale with the same sort of ratio of BEVs to EVSEs? What is that ratio? And would it be feasible to expand to a total of 400 EVSEs, assuming 400 BEVs, and manage charge? Or is there logistical challenges to this? What are they?
I think there's 2 parts I heard there. Juan, how about you take the fleet side? How many to your fleet are you looking at? Like, fine, and I'll answer kind of the ratio that might be helpful with charge management. I'll let you go first.
Okay, so we actually did we hired a company to put a dyno on each one of our trucks in the city. We did 40 trucks, not on every truck, but we tested on different routes. And we identified every one of our routes in the 3 city facility can be done with the existing truck that we have. So as we continue to purchase electric vehicles for the city, we are getting them with the same capacity on the battery, which is around 260 kilowatts. The newest trucks are a little bit more efficient. As you know, we got the first generation, first ever produced on a production line. So the second generation, the newest trucks are about 25% more energy efficient. And the battery have a different layout. So with the same size battery, we can do about 200 trucks. We can replace every trucks in the city with electric trucks. They are not ready for our two facilities that are outside the city that do a much longer range. We will hold on that until battery capacity improve a little more, but over 50% of our fleet overall can be converted to electric right away.
Yeah. And I'll answer that second part of that question, which I think hopefully the listener, whoever put in there, I'm interpreting this correctly, but what I heard was, what's the ratio of chargers to vehicles? Like, how much infrastructure is required to support the trucks? Traditionally, we've seen a 1-to-1 ratio. As trucks come in, we have one plug to one truck. We're seeing that change a little bit. We're seeing faster chargers. We're seeing faster truck charging speeds, meaning the truck can charge faster. And we're seeing that ratio be a little bit less, maybe 1 to 1.5. And Juan's being a little bit humble here, but I'll call him out on it. Manhattan Beer has multiple OEMs. They have a mixed fleet of battery electric trucks. And when you have a mixed fleet from all the major OEMs that they're testing to see what's going to be the best opportunity, who has the best. Right now, I think you're testing a total of 11 vehicles, and they have 6 charger plugs to support those. And so when you're looking at that ratio, I think as the industry kind of moves towards it, it's really critical why you need to talk to an integrator or an EV charging expert like a BP Pulse, which is we do a full analysis of what your fleet looks like. We identify what the duty cycle is, because the fastest, largest charger might not necessarily be the best charger for you. And depending on what that duty cycle is, depending on what your operational needs are, we can then recommend what that ratio of charger to vehicle can be. And in some cases, you can have a 2-to-1, where you have 10 chargers and 20 trucks, or it might be 10 chargers and 15 trucks. But we're seeing more and more in the industry, people looking to really monetize that investment they have in those chargers. It's not an inexpensive investment for EV charging. And so if you can monetize that with more utilization of that charger, meaning you have more trucks that are using it, and maybe adjust some of the operational needs where you have somebody that pulls a truck in, charges it, leaves, and then pulls the next one in, we're finding that's more and more of a trend in the industry. We still have folks that are really dedicated to 1-to-1 plug to truck, because that's what's required for their personal use case, for their operational needs. So hopefully that answers the question that the caller or the listener wanted to.
No, that was great. And I think we have time for maybe one more question here. So were there any unique challenges to electrifying in the food and beverage distribution industry?
So for us, the biggest challenge was we didn't know the equipment, and we were very careful on the route. So we were driving the trucks at the beginning, just around Holmes Point, around our area. And once we got familiar with the trucks and started pushing it farther out, we learned the capability of the trucks, and we decided to use it on a 100-mile radius. So we started going farther out and do a route that covered 100 miles. So that was the small challenge we have, was buying the bullet on buying these trucks without knowing how much we can do with them. Was a little, they are expensive, and we did look for help. We received some incentive to purchase the truck. So that was a little bit of paperwork and stuff, but we know how to do it. And we were able to receive incentive from our local DOT, New York City DOT, Clean Truck Program here in Holmes Point. And I don't think if you present the full package to a CFO, will be approved. So I did order the truck without approval. So I just placed the order, then apologize for spending the money.
And from an industry kind of standpoint, what we see across the country is the beverage industry is a really ideal use case for electrification. You have return to base every day to reload. It's usually regional, inner city, or within a metropolitan area. The routes are 60 to 100 to sometimes 125 miles. So it all falls within that perfect use case for battery electric. And I think we're seeing more and more people in the beverage industry adopt this because of early pioneers like Manhattan Beer, who have proven that it works, that have already done the hard testing, have piloted these, and all the lessons learned from Manhattan Beer and other food and beverage companies that were early adopters. Now I think there's confidence that some other folks that have been sitting on the sidelines saying, we're going to wait for technology. We don't know if it works just yet. And I hope what you heard today was that it actually does. Proof points and understanding that, software is a critical component to make sure that that system is, and those chargers have the greatest uptime so that you're not compromising your operations. And also that load management and deferred charging to make sure you have the lowest cost of energy. So when you combine the software component with pioneers like Manhattan Beer, with technology like Volvo and other OEMs, and you add the utility and good contractors to that, there should be no reason that you can have a really, really great experience in a good project if you're looking to adopt EV charging and battery electric charging in your Class 8 fleets.
Awesome. That was some very insightful stuff, guys. I appreciate it. That is all the time we do have for today. But for anyone who asked a question that wasn't answered, we'll be following up via email to answer your questions individually. We hope that you all enjoyed today's webinar. I want to again thank you, Juan Corsino and Sean Larkin and BP Pulse for today's presentation. I also want to mention that this webinar will be available on demand on the Heavy Duty Truck website at truckinginfo.com/webinars. Thank you and have a great day.